Michael froze when the courthouse clerk looked up from her computer and quietly said, "I'm sorry. According to these records, you signed away every ownership right to your company almost 8 months ago." The room went silent. Michael stared at the screen, as if it had to be wrong. "I never signed anything like that." The clerk hesitated before turning the monitor toward him. "There are your signatures. His own name, his own handwriting, his own life, stolen." Michael reached for the desk to steady himself. His company wasn't just a business. It had taken him 23 years to build from a rented garage into one of Ohio's fastest-growing custom furniture manufacturers. Now, according to the law, it belonged to someone else. And the person listed as majority owner made his stomach drop. His wife, Emily Carter. The woman who had kissed him goodbye that very morning. The woman who looked him in the eyes every night and told him everything would be okay while he recovered from heart surgery. Michael slowly whispered, "How long has she been planning this?" 3 years earlier, life had looked very different. At 52, Michael Carter wasn't flashy. He drove an 8-year-old pickup truck, wore work boots almost every day, and still ate lunch with his factory employees. Most customers assumed he was just another worker. He preferred it that way. His father had once told him, "If people respect your title more than your character, you've already failed." Michael never forgot those words. He built Carter Woodworks one client at a time. No investors, no shortcuts, no family money, just thousands of early mornings and countless sleepless nights. His wife Emily had entered his life 12 years earlier. She was warm, confident, organized, and seemed to admire Michael's humble lifestyle. Unlike his previous relationships, Emily never asked for expensive gifts. She encouraged him to slow down. "You've already won," she'd often tell him. "You don't have to prove anything anymore." Michael believed she'd saved him from becoming a workaholic. When they married, his employees celebrated as if a family member had found happiness. Even his daughter, Sarah, eventually accepted Emily after some hesitation. Sarah lived in Colorado with her husband and rarely visited because of work. Still, she called every Sunday without fail. One evening during one of those calls, Sarah asked carefully, "Dad, how involved is Emily with the company now?" Michael smiled. "She mostly helps with paperwork. You've given her access to everything. She's my wife." Sarah became quiet. "I know, I just have a strange feeling." Michael laughed gently. "You've watched too many crime shows." Sarah forced a laugh. "Maybe." Neither of them realized how important that conversation would become. Months later, Michael suffered a mild heart attack while inspecting equipment at the factory. Doctors assured him he'd recover. But recovery required months away from work. Emily immediately stepped in. "I'll handle everything," she insisted. "You focus on getting healthy." Michael resisted. "I should still review contracts." Emily squeezed his hand. "You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Now let me take care of you." It sounded like love. It wasn't. Within weeks, Emily hired a financial consultant named Victor Lang. She introduced him as someone who specialized in restructuring growing businesses. Michael barely questioned it. Victor always arrived carrying folders full of paperwork. Most meetings lasted only minutes. Just routine compliance updates, insurance revisions, tax adjustments, state filings. Emily always placed sticky notes where Michael needed to sign. He trusted her completely. One afternoon, Michael frowned while flipping through several pages. "This seems longer than usual." Emily smiled patiently. "Victor said regulations changed." Victor nodded confidently. "It happens all the time." Michael sighed. "I hate legal paperwork." Emily laughed. "Exactly why I'm helping." He signed again and again, without reading every page. Across town, Emily and Victor met privately inside an upscale restaurant Michael had never visited. Victor slid a folder across the table. "He still suspects nothing." Emily took a slow sip of wine. "He never will." Victor smiled. "The ownership transfer is almost complete." Emily looked out the window. "What about his daughter?" Victor shrugged. "She lives 2,000 miles away." Emily smiled faintly. "Perfect." Neither of them noticed someone sitting 2 booths away. A young waitress overheard only one sentence. "Once everything is finalized, he'll own nothing." The waitress frowned. The conversation sounded strange. But wealthy people often discussed business. She ignored it, a decision she'd later regret. Recovery wasn't easy. Michael struggled emotionally more than physically. For the first time in decades, he wasn't solving problems every day. He felt useless. Emily constantly reassured him. The company's doing great. Everyone misses you. Just heal. She even brought printed reports home every Friday. Sales looked strong. Profits were increasing. Employees seemed happy. Michael felt proud. I couldn't have done this without you. Emily kissed his forehead. We're a team. The words sounded sincere. Behind his back, she was quietly replacing everyone loyal to Michael. His longtime accountant retired unexpectedly. His office manager resigned after 19 years. 2 senior supervisors accepted mysterious severance packages. Each replacement answered directly to Emily. Whenever someone questioned the changes, they were gone within weeks. Meanwhile, Sarah noticed something odd. Every Sunday call became shorter. Emily usually answered Michael's phone first. Dad's resting. Dad's in physical therapy. Dad's asleep. One evening, Sarah finally insisted. I want to talk to him. Emily paused. He's exhausted. I'll wait. Another pause. Eventually, Michael answered. His voice sounded cheerful. Hey, kiddo. Sarah smiled with relief. Dad, are you okay? I'm great. You sound different. Michael laughed. Getting old. Sarah hesitated. Can I ask you something? Always. Have you personally looked at the company's bank statements recently? Michael blinked. No. Why? No reason. She didn't want to worry him without proof. Just promise me you'll check everything yourself once you're back. I promise. Emily stood quietly outside the bedroom door, listening. Every word. 2 weeks later, Michael finally returned to Carter Woodworks. Something immediately felt wrong. Employees stopped talking when he walked by. Several avoided eye contact. His old office had been completely redesigned. Emily's name appeared first on the executive directory. His own office had become noticeably smaller. Michael forced a smile. Looks like you've been busy. Emily laughed. I wanted the place to feel modern. Before he could ask another question, Victor walked in carrying more documents. Good timing, Michael sighed playfully. More paperwork. Victor smiled. Just a few signatures to officially complete everything we've been updating during your recovery. Michael reached for the pen. Then something unusual caught his eye. A single sentence buried near the bottom of one page. Transfer of controlling membership interests. He stopped writing. What exactly is this? For the first time in months, Emily looked nervous. Michael held the document a little farther from his face. Victor, what does transfer of controlling membership interests mean? Victor answered almost too quickly. It's standard legal wording. Michael didn't sign. Standard for what? Emily stepped between them with an easy smile. Mike, you're reading one sentence out of 50 pages. It's just updating the ownership structure because of tax regulations. He looked at her. Ownership structure. Victor opened another folder. When you were recovering, your attorney recommended temporary adjustments so the business could continue operating without delays. My attorney, Victor nodded. Mr. Collins. Michael frowned. I haven't spoken to Collins in months. A flicker crossed Emily's face. He was busy. He handled everything through me. Michael slowly closed the folder. I'll call him myself. For the first time, neither Emily nor Victor had an answer ready. I don't mind signing, Michael said calmly, after I understand every page. Victor forced a smile. Of course, but as he packed the papers away, Michael noticed his hand shaking. That single detail stayed with him long after the meeting ended. That evening, Michael called Richard Collins, the attorney who had represented his business for nearly 15 years. The receptionist sounded confused. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Mr. Collins retired last spring. Retired? Yes. His client files were transferred to another firm. No one told me. We mailed notices to all clients. Michael never received one. After hanging up, he searched through months of unopened mail stacked in his home office. Nothing. No retirement letter. No transfer notice. No legal updates. Someone had been filtering his mail. He walked into the kitchen. Emily, have you been organizing the mail while I was recovering? She looked up from her laptop. Of course. Did you throw anything away? Just junk. Michael nodded slowly. That makes sense. He smiled. But inside, something had changed. For the first time in 12 years. He didn't believe her. The next morning, instead of driving to the factory, Michael stopped at a small diner outside town. Only one person was waiting there, David Monroe, his former operations manager. David had unexpectedly retired 6 months earlier. Michael had always thought the timing was strange. David stood as Michael approached. "It's good to see you back. You too." After ordering coffee, Michael asked the question directly. "Did you really retire?" David looked around before answering. "No, you were fired." David gave a small nod. "I refused to approve vendor contracts Emily wanted." "What was wrong with them? They belonged to companies that barely existed." Michael's stomach tightened. "I tried telling you. When I emailed you 5 times. I never got anything." David looked him in the eye. "That's because Emily intercepted every message." Silence filled the booth. David leaned forward. "Your company changed the day you got sick." Michael spent the rest of the afternoon quietly reviewing financial records. At first glance, everything looked normal. Revenue was stable. Expenses seemed reasonable. Profits looked healthy, too healthy. He dug deeper. Several supplier invoices had identical formatting. Different company names, same font, same invoice numbers. The payment addresses all led to different mailboxes in neighboring towns. His pulse quickened. Someone wasn't buying materials. Someone was creating fake companies. Then he found another detail. Every payment required 2 electronic approvals. One belonged to Emily. The second was supposedly his. Michael stared at the screen. "I never approved these." That night, he couldn't sleep. He quietly walked downstairs around 2 in the morning. Emily wasn't in bed. Light spilled from beneath the office door. He moved silently through the hallway. Her voice floated through the partially opened door. "No." He's starting to ask questions. A man's voice came through the speakerphone. "Victor, you need one more signature." "I know. If he refuses, everything becomes harder." Emily sighed. "I'll handle him. Don't wait too long." Michael stepped back before the floor creaked. His heart pounded. He returned upstairs unnoticed. But now, he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't confusion. It was a plan, and he was the target. The following Sunday, Sarah arrived unexpectedly from Colorado. She hadn't told anyone she was coming. Emily opened the front door. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise Dad." Emily forced another smile. "He's resting." Sarah walked past her. "I'll wake him." Michael heard the voices and came downstairs. His face lit up. "Kiddo." Sarah hugged him tightly. "You've lost weight." "I'll survive." Emily watched from the kitchen, trying to hide her irritation. During dinner, the conversation stayed polite. Too polite. Finally, Sarah asked, "Dad, how's the company?" Michael answered carefully, "It's changing." Emily laughed. "Every growing business changes." Sarah looked directly at her. "Some changes help, and some hide things." The room became quiet. Emily set down her fork. "What exactly are you implying?" Sarah smiled politely. "Nothing." But everyone knew she meant something. The next morning, Sarah asked Michael to meet her at the old warehouse his company had rented years ago. She handed him a folder. "I hired someone." "You what?" "A forensic accountant." Michael looked surprised. "You did this?" "I started getting worried months ago." Inside were printed bank transfers, corporate filings, property records, and photographs. One page stopped Michael cold. Victor Lang wasn't an independent consultant. He owned 40% of a holding company. The remaining 60% belonged to Emily. Another page listed for shell companies. Each had received hundreds of thousands of dollars from Carter Woodworks. All 4 companies shared one mailing address. A small office building outside Cleveland. Sarah looked at her father carefully. "They've been moving money for almost a year." Michael slowly sat down. "How much?" "Almost $3 million. He covered his face with both hands. Not because of the money, because he finally understood his wife hadn't made one bad decision. She had built an entire second life while pretending to protect him. That afternoon, Michael drove to the office address listed in the report. The receptionist looked surprised. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Oak Ridge Supply." She frowned. "We don't have a company by that name." "What about North Horizon Logistics?" "No. Silver Pine Materials." She shook her head again. Michael showed her the mailing address. She looked closer. She pointed toward a hallway. "Mailbox rentals. Just rows of locked metal boxes. No offices. No employees. No business. Only empty names." His company had been wiring millions of dollars to mailboxes. As Michael walked back to his truck, someone called his name. It was a woman in her late 20s. "I know who you are. I'm sorry. I used to work here." She introduced herself as Hannah. "I processed incoming mail until last month." Michael listened carefully. There was a woman who came every Friday. What woman? Elegant, blonde. Emily. She always collected mail for several companies. Michael felt his throat tighten. Was she alone? Usually. Sometimes a man came with her. She pointed to a photo on Michael's phone. "Victor. That's him." Hannah hesitated. "I probably shouldn't say this." Michael waited. "One day I heard him joking." "What did he say?" She swallowed. He laughed and said, "By the time Michael figures it out, he'll be thanking us for letting him keep his house." Michael didn't say another word. He simply thanked her and walked away. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had spent 23 years building a business. Emily and Victor had spent less than 1 year trying to erase him from it. But they had made one mistake. They thought Michael was only a craftsman. They forgot he was also the man who had built a successful company from nothing. And people like that don't give up easily. That evening, instead of confronting Emily, Michael made a different choice. He quietly called the one person no one expected him to trust. A former federal financial crimes investigator who had once been one of his biggest customers. When the man answered, Michael spoke only one sentence. "I think my own wife has stolen my company." There was a brief silence. Then the investigator replied, "If that's true, don't accuse anyone yet. Let them believe they've already won." Michael looked through the window. Emily was smiling in the backyard, watering flowers as if nothing had happened. For the first time since the nightmare began, Michael smiled too. Not because he was happy, because he finally had something he hadn't had in months. A plan. Michael ended the call and followed the investigator's advice exactly. He didn't confront Emily. He didn't accuse Victor. He acted like the same trusting husband they believed they had already defeated. The next morning, Emily smiled over breakfast. "You seem better today." Michael buttered a piece of toast. "I've been thinking." "About what?" "Maybe I should finally step back from the business." Emily's eyes lit up for just a fraction of a second before she hid it. "You've worked hard. You deserve to enjoy life." "I agree. I can handle things from here." Michael nodded. "I know you can." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you." For the first time since they married, those words sounded completely empty. Over the next 3 weeks, Michael secretly assembled a team. The former federal financial crimes investigator, Daniel Brooks, agreed to help him organize the evidence. A new business attorney reviewed every filing connected to Carter Woodworks. A forensic accountant traced every payment that had left the company during Michael's recovery. David Monroe quietly contacted several former employees who had been pushed out. Each one had a similar story. They questioned unusual transactions. Within days, they were replaced. Meanwhile, Sarah stayed in Ohio, helping gather documents without drawing attention. Every new piece fit the same picture. Emily and Victor hadn't made random mistakes. They had followed a careful pattern. Intercept Michael's communication, replace loyal employees, create shell companies, move company money, transfer ownership. Leave Michael with almost nothing before he even realized it. But one detail changed everything. The digital signatures approving the transfers. The forensic accountant discovered they had all been approved from the same office computer inside Carter Woodworks. Michael had supposedly approved dozens of transactions, while hospital records proved he had been recovering over 100 miles away. That contradiction alone raised serious legal questions. Daniel smiled when he saw it. They were careful. He tapped the report, but they got greedy. A week later, Emily announced exciting news during an executive meeting. "I've scheduled a celebration dinner this Friday." Victor grinned. "What are we celebrating?" Emily looked at Michael. "Michael has decided to retire." The room erupted with polite applause. Michael stood and smiled. "I've spent most of my life building this company." He looked around the room. "I think it's time to let the next generation lead." Emily looked relieved. Victor even raised a glass of water. Neither of them noticed several unfamiliar faces sitting quietly near the back. They weren't investors. They were investigators, reviewing everything that happened during the meeting. Friday evening arrived. The celebration took place in the company's showroom. Employees, suppliers, and local business leaders filled the room. Emily stood beside Michael with a confident smile. She lifted her glass. "To Michael, A man whose hard work built this incredible company. Everyone applauded. She continued. And 2 new beginnings. Before she could say another word, the front doors opened. Daniel Brooks walked in with Michael's attorney. Behind them were 2 uniformed officers and 2 state financial investigators. The music stopped. Every conversation died instantly. Emily's smile faded. Victor's face turned pale. Daniel spoke calmly. We need to ask a few questions regarding several financial transactions involving Carter Woodworks. Victor laughed nervously. There must be some misunderstanding. Michael looked at him. I don't think there is. Emily stepped forward. This isn't the place. Daniel nodded. You're right. He placed several thick binders on a nearby table. Which is exactly why we brought the evidence here. The room became silent. Employees watched in disbelief as document after document was displayed. Bank transfers, corporate filings, property records, email logs, digital access reports, hospital records, witness statements. The forensic accountant explained how millions of dollars had been routed through shell companies. The attorney showed how ownership documents had been altered using misleading paperwork. Daniel presented the digital records proving Michael could not have approved the transactions. Victor tried interrupting. This proves nothing. Daniel calmly handed him another document. It proves your office computer created the approvals. Victor's confidence disappeared. Emily looked at Michael. Tears filled her eyes. Mike, please. He didn't answer. She took another step. I can explain. He finally spoke. No. You can tell the investigators. Within days, the courts froze the disputed assets, while the investigation continued. Several fraudulent transfers were reversed. The shell companies were shut down. Millions of dollars that hadn't yet been spent were recovered. The ownership changes were declared invalid after evidence showed they had been obtained through deception. Michael once again became the legal owner of Carter Wood. Victor resigned before formal charges were filed against him for financial crimes. And Emily faced the legal consequences of her actions through the civil and criminal process. For Michael, however, the biggest victory wasn't reclaiming the company. It was reclaiming the trust of the people who had stood by him. A month later, Michael invited every employee to the factory floor. The mood felt different. Hope had returned. He stood on the same wooden platform where he had given speeches for years. I owe all of you an apology. The room fell quiet. I believed trust meant never asking questions. He looked around. I was wrong. Real trust doesn't fear honesty. It welcomes it. He announced that every financial process would now require independent oversight. Anonymous employee reporting would be introduced. No single executive, including himself, would ever control every decision again. The workers applauded. Not because of the policy, because they knew the company they loved finally belonged to integrity again. Later that evening, Michael and Sarah sat outside the old garage, where Carter Woodworks had first begun. The building was empty now, but he had never sold it. Sarah smiled. You know, I almost gave up trying to convince you. Michael chuckled softly. You never did, you just got smarter. She laughed. You finally listened. I should have listened sooner. After a long silence, Michael handed her a small envelope. She opened it. Inside was a new ownership certificate. Her eyes widened. Dad, I've transferred part of the company to you. She looked up in surprise. I don't want it because you're my daughter. I want it because you've already proven you'll protect what matters. Tears filled her eyes. She hugged him tightly. I won't let you down. I know. Months later, Carter Woodworks wasn't just profitable again, it had become stronger than ever. Customers returned after hearing how the company had survived betrayal without sacrificing its values. Former employees came back. Young apprentices joined the team. The business grew steadily, not because of revenge, but because of renewed trust. As for Michael, he no longer measured success by the size of his company. He measured it by the people standing beside him. Looking back, he realized something that took him more than 20 years to learn. Building a business takes skill. Building a family takes love. But protecting both requires wisdom. Sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who know exactly where your guard is, down. And while betrayal can take away your comfort, your confidence, and even your livelihood for a time, it can never permanently defeat someone who chooses patience over panic, truth over anger, and justice over revenge. Because in the end, the strongest comeback isn't destroying the people who betrayed you. It's rebuilding a life they failed to take away.